Hello everyone. Today I'd like to talk about the affirmation of life. How life can be redeemed, all of its negative qualities, all of its frightful and hateful qualities. How all of the fearfulness and all of that productivity regarding life can be absolved. How you can learn to love life and realize that life, truthfully, is beautiful. How you can say that great yes to life and no longer worry about the troubles and the strife of, say, the nature or the inherent nature, existential nature of life. There are a lot of people, philosophers and religious people, and as well as just ordinary people day to day, who seem to hate life in many different ways. They see life as unjust, but I'm here to prove to you that that's wrong. But first, because there's a number of different ways in which this needs to be proved, is affirmation. First, you must understand the necessity of saying that great yes, of jumping forward and putting yourself forward in a position where you can take on the great sufferings and struggles in order to become stronger, let's say, spiritually, and why that's necessary. You see, well, as I made in a previous video when I talked about art, I also talked about it in a way of justifying life and affirming life as well. The Dionysiac yes, then comes the revelation, then comes the interpretation. In a way, what I'm about to say is somewhat similar, although it's more to do with actual philosophy of life itself rather than artwork. And so, the first thing which needs to be done is, well, there are three main phases in the life of anyone, whether they like it or not. And the more you learn to epitomize each of these phases in your life, the more successful I believe you will be in living. So first, you need to learn to bear all of the struggles and the suffering of life. In fact, go out of your way to take things on face to face, and to learn to take upon your shoulders all of the hardships and the suffering that you can in your life. No matter how hateful it may seem to you, it all serves a greater purpose. And if you live with any sort of goal in your youth, it should be a goal which involves quite a deal of hardship and suffering, rather than the easy, comfortable path. Because the easy, comfortable path will always lead you towards decadence, no matter how fruitful you believe that path may be. Then there will come a time in your life where, after taking on so much struggle and so much suffering, you will then become like a predator, like a great lion. You'll become a purveyor of all those facets of struggle and suffering. You'll become strong spiritually, and here you will be able to become a chooser, say. And you'll be able to choose fate. You'll be able to use your will to engineer the microcosmic world around you to suit your accomplishment and your fulfilling of that preconceived goal of suffering and struggle. In this sense, you'll become above the suffering, above the struggle. It'll simply be ingrained in you so much that you will no longer have any hatred towards it. And in this sense, you will have risen above it. This is where men are in their prime. This is where I believe the warrior traits within men come. The same thing can be said about women to a smaller degree. But I'm mostly speaking from a male perspective in this one regard. After this, after your prime is gone, you've become, say, older, then there will come a time where more wisdom will become beneficial to you. But in order to become wise, truly, you must become soft and pliable, like a child, say. And you will live in this world like a child would learn after coming into this world. You will learn things to know, whereas in the past, you didn't have to try and find the truth like some sort of scientist, because that's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying that you should avoid truth because you can't know. When you were young, it's better to know things than to learn and to be taught or to teach oneself. Because the more you question life and question existence, the harder it is to say that impulsive yes. That impulsive yes becomes more and more impossible. And so it's better to jump forth into life and trust your instincts and trust your own faith in struggle, and never to lose faith in struggle. And then when you reach an older age, then wisdom will come, because you will learn as a child learns and grows within life, and then you can rationally justify life, but only then. Most people don't do this. Most people don't take upon themselves suffering and try to bear suffering, and for that reason, I'm trying to find a better camera angle. For that reason, most people can't justify life. The next point I want to make is about truth. Truth itself is completely subjective, because the world is ever changing, and the world we see is so truth is ever changing as well. And the world we experience is a microcosmic world. If we take the world to be the playing field for all being in this in existence, of course there's being that transcends humanity and the microcosm and the earth in which we live. Of course that being exists, that godliness, that godly being. And so whatever way you look at it, the world we experience is a microcosmic world. And so it doesn't really matter how narrowed down, how atomized the world we live in is. We will always experience truth in the same way, in a subjective way. And so say at one point in your life you knew something, and then at another point this was disproved. It did not mean that you didn't know it at the time in your life. To the world in which you existed, when you know something, it's still a fact. It's still a fact of your existence and of the world in which you live in, as long as you know it in your heart. Even if, scientifically, say, mathematically, you were wrong, and you were disproved later on, you just simply are changing into a different world. You are becoming in a different world. Your being has altered in that period. Since you knew what you knew in your youth. And so that's why I say, if you take on a set of mantras and a set of values which are designed by yourself to execute that goal which you want to execute, what you know is not wrong. In fact, truth can be proved on a microcosmic stage without having to resort to logic and to that was as diametrically opposed to the spirit and to being, overt rationality. That will all come later in your life, after you have experienced a world which you wanted to experience. A world which is not just in the rational sense, but just in, say, the spiritual sense. Something in my mouth. A fly or something. So say, for example, how we come into the world with nothing, and so we leave the world with nothing. And people often, who are moral people, tend to try and justify the world around them to a greater degree than that, using morality. This is why I say, in order to affirm life, a great deal of amorality is needed. You must not be a moral person, and not follow, say, preconceived virtues and vices, but rather live in accordance to your will, and take upon you as much suffering as possible. In order to engineer a society where your will is the main driving force behind your being. and do not worry about morality. Because the more you moralize, the more you are basically saying that if I live a certain way, then I'm somehow hard done by things which I can't change. You know, if you look at nature, and you look at say an animal eating another animal, and the animal being eaten could have been the most moral thing in the world, and then it's getting its insides ripped out. And a lot of people who take this worldly, lively hardship and say that it's unjust because of some aspiritual nonsense which they've conjured up for themselves in order to lie to themselves, in order to live more comfortably. And they say, I can avoid, say, worldly suffering if I just live according to these goals and these precepts. One more thing I will say is that everything in this world is connected to one another. All being in this world was born through becoming, and vice versa. All being bears becoming, and it's cyclical. It works in a cycle. And for this reason, if at any moment you can justify, you can revel and you can feel every fibre of your being, of your fate and of your being, in a sense of oneness and of pleasure and of happiness and satisfaction with the world it's experiencing, through either it can be something minute, it can be a piece of music, say, which inspires it, or even the act of reproduction, or a great meal, or dancing, or it can be anything really, game of sports. That if you can at one point in your life feel completely satisfied and feel completely at one with the world and with nature, and nature becomes spiritually justified to you, it becomes something of great satisfaction and of empowerment. In order to create that moment, all of the becoming and the being which existed previously throughout the entire world, throughout the entire cycle of time, in the macrocosm, was needed to create that moment. And so you cannot justify this and not justify that, as most moral people tend to do. The world itself, and all being and all becoming, all good and evil, let's say, are really all connected to one another. They are products and they are precepts for one another. And so in order to justify any moment of this existence, you must justify all of the rest of it. If at any moment you felt such immense satisfaction and pleasure and such a great willpower at any moment in your life, just know that at that moment the entirety of being and of the world itself was needed to create that moment. And of course that moment will echo throughout time, again and again, as will all of the moments where you felt down and demoralized, and you felt as if this world was full of suffering and hardship, and even if you were tempted with the idea that it was unjust in some way, which it isn't. That too will be echoed throughout history. That too is connected to even the most satisfactory, pleasurable moments in your life. You don't justify any moment, you must justify all moments. And in that sense, life is affirmed. All of the negative qualities are redeemed, because through the power of the will and through your own being and becoming, you became connected spiritually and satisfied without end with the world itself. Those are the main points I'll give. Of course I can talk more about it, but I'm running out of time at the moment. So I was just going to make that quick video. And don't ever be disheartened, and don't ever lose faith and struggle. That's my message to everyone.